Yeah.
So, Jean-Michael, tell me about the problem you solve and who do you solve it for?
I help new SaaS founders, SaaS CEOs work on things that are pre-product market fit. So that's my specialty. It's usually companies where they're launching a new product and they haven't built a user acquisition system that works, or it could be venture funded companies and they're not sure which features to invest in or which product direction and positioning to go with. So I help them use this massive feedback approach, which is really taking like an engineering approach to the marketing and isolating the variables so you can understand, why are you getting the results that you're getting and which direction should you go where you've really proven it out. That's what I do.
Got it. So I heard you say iterative. And
Yeah.
what else makes you unique in how you solve this for founders?
The massive feedback method. And really, it's the method that is the least risk, the least capital at risk. The way that we do that is we rank order all the elements that go into messaging and dissected it and put it in the rank order. So we start first making sure that whatever part of your application or your company is a pain reliever for customers, that we know what's their chief pain. And we combine that from a few different points. One is, how do we run marketing tests where we actually get real market feedback from people clicking on things and taking actions? We also take it from, how do we take your sales team's conversations and what they figured out and feed that back into the testing? What are the things that really move people to try your application? And that's just the start. And then we sequence every little piece as it depends on the next one until you're left with a high performance ad that's driving user acquisition.
That sounds like exciting and incredible. How long do you think it takes to see that beginning layer of success? And then how long are people using these
Yeah.
funnels that you've created for them?
Great question. It typically takes a company, depending on where they are and how much customers understanding they have, between 1 month and 3 months to fully unlock a new acquisition system with paid marketing. And how long they last, it's evergreen. You get it forever. There is the fact that no ad will perform forever. People get tired of things and the trends change. But what we do is we install operation systems so that you stay on top of the curve so that you're never caught needing a new ad, that you always have something ready to go that's proven.
Got it. And what's the best way to get to work with you? Or how do you like to bring folks into your ecosystem?
The best way, what I love to do, especially if somebody's considering this approach, is just to spend some time talking through their problem and seeing what's the immediate wins that we can do right now for the strategy that they're taking. And the way to book a call with me to go through that is freegrowthsession.com. So just go there. That's my Calendly link. And you can find me that way. Julia, can you tell me who you're serving right now?
I am Julia Myers. I founded Generational Wisdom, and I am looking for wealthy working families that want to talk to their kids about money. I serve wealthy working families struggling with the pressures of raising kids without entitlement. The problem they're struggling with is the pressure. How could you help me? I'm not a SaaS
Yeah.
founder, and yet
Yeah.
what you have is still valuable.
What led you down this path?
As a mom of 5 kids that are going to be set to inherit lots of blessings as well as lots of material wealth, I found that talking about money with them has always been very natural and very commonplace. And when talking with other parents and other peers, talking about money is not normal. And so trying to understand, why aren't we talking about money? What are the stories we tell ourselves about money? And then how do, our influences with money as parents reflect or imprint on our kids? And then you layer in different generations, different technology, different banking systems. Rolling coins is not a thing that kids do anymore, but it's something that
Yeah.
I did. And so it was important for me to understand what other parents were going through. And how do you start the conversation if you've never had it before?
Yeah. That's a great question. I'm wondering how you do start that conversation. It makes me think about people I know who are inheriting or have inherited. And I can tell that not everybody has handled it with the same amount of skill. And so I can definitely see why it's so necessary. And I'm wondering, how do you broach it? Like, how do you start this
For
conversation?
me, you actually don't talk about money at all. It's counterintuitive. You talk about something you do have in common. And for most families, they have their calendars, they have their time. And so I parallel the conversation with money and drip it to them by starting with, how does your calendar reflect what you prioritize? How does your calendar, with a fixed amount of time, show what you think is important? And then once you talk about, what do you like about that? What do you not like about that? What do you wish you had more time to do or not more time to do? You've now united on something in common. And you can say, what's stopping us from getting there? And usually
Mhm.
that's money, but not always. And it might be valuing the money in a way that you see it as like a currency, like time.
Yeah,
Uh,
I love that connection because that's our definitely our number one scarcest resource that you can't, at least today, we don't know how to get more time, right? So I can see how that is segues right into the next most precious resource.
it's exciting to get to work with families individually. It's exciting to speak from stage at investor conferences or to family offices, large family legacy events.
Mhm.
That is where you can hear me speak. And that is where you can work with me to get this information into the hands of the people you love. Because I say leaving your wealth without the wisdom to manage it is like leaving your legacy to the lottery and you're just leaving it to chance. Don't play
Yeah.
the lottery with your legacy. Use it for good and talk about money.
Yeah. This is something where we are definitely have something in common about our approach. I'm 100% against leaving things to chance.
So, in a specific marketing strategy,
Yeah.
how do you negate those variables of chance and how do you use data? What are the pieces that I need to get started to build a funnel to help serve my audience?
Yeah, it's very similar. I specialize in SaaS, but starting anything from scratch is very similar. You have the same questions, especially if if it's not really common in the market, you have the same issues as any other like new launch. So the way I typically like to start is just assess who it is that we're going for and look at everything in their world right now. So even before starting to run experiments, your first work would be some kind of market research. And there's different ways to do this, but it's really getting a sense of what are all the messages that these people have in front of them today. And there's so many ways to do that. One is to figure out what kind of YouTube channels are they watching? What kind of language are in those? How do they refer to each other and themselves in public and in private? And anything that's serving those people gives you an indication about what's the right positioning. So that's the very basics. I like to say that the best research has already been done by all your competitors. So anyone serving that same market has done a ton of research, and just that they have something working, that's giving you a lot of information about how to start. So that's how I'd start. I would start by mapping out the like 3 top direct competitors who are offering exactly the same thing that you are. And then I would look at the indirect competitors who is solving a problem in the same space for the same people, even though it's not exactly what you're doing. And then and stop me if I'm going way too much in the weeds.
No, that's perfect. So,
Yeah.
step
Yeah.
one,
Yeah.
don't pay for any ads. Step one is I need to understand where my consumer is receiving information and where
Yeah.
they're hanging out. And then indirectly, I can do that without polling or paying for my customer to tell me. I can look at what my competition is doing in my
Yeah.
space and learn from.
Exactly. And I like to separate the different pieces of a message that they're receiving. So I would look at for each of these people, each of the indirect and direct competitors, you could look at what's the major promise that they're making. You can look at what kind of claims that they make and what kind of proof, what are the specific proofs that they use to back up those claims, because different consumers are used to different types of proof. And then you can also look, do your competitors have a unique mechanism? Do they have, nowadays, there's so many ways to get the same benefit, but do they have a unique path that's taking you there? And I would also dissect that for each of these folks. These are columns in my mind, and the rows are like the attributes. And that helps you develop the copy. It's a great place to start. It also helps you understand, okay, what offers are they making and what are the price points in the typical terms? That's where I would start. So just making this big map.
I love the visual because sometimes what you think might be their customer journey is not at all what it actually is. And so
Yeah.
getting rid of variable one by collecting market data, I think is a great first step. What should I do
Yeah.
next?
What should you do next? So it's a lot of mapping, a lot of
Okay.
mapping. First is, and this is the thing, actually, lots of people, they want an exciting test. Let's get started. Everybody wants to get started. But the best way to win is to make sure you don't have to re-measure and re-experiment to learn something that everybody else who's successful in the area has learned. So that's why it's so important. After making this map, I would not only just describe it, I would take, say, snippets of the copy and the phrases that they're using so you really understand the language. And then after that, I'm going to try to get my whiteboard in here. I would make this map.
This is good. So good.
What I would do is map out 3 things. First, I would take a map of the customer, a map of their beliefs, and a map of the product. And just for high level, I'll show you what that looks like. So I won't draw all of it, but the idea is each area is something to map out. So you have your ICP, and you're gonna understand, or you're gonna write down what you think their pain points are, their jobs to be done that are functional, like the tasks that they have to do that are relevant. You would write down their emotional jobs to be done, and that's really a gold mine. It's difficult to find that out, but what kind of emotional work do they have to do? Not everybody will tell you that, but when you find it, it's very useful in terms of really helping somebody know that you understand them. You would write down their objections, and you would write down their dream outcome. And for all of these, I have a big canvas I like to use, and you can use Post-its if you want to. And the idea is when you start, you color coded, everything is unvalidated. And as you do this work, you start to replace them with like green Post-its, for example. When you have sufficient data that lets you know that, yeah, this really is a pain point for these people. It's not just something I assume. I actually have real data for it. So that's what you would do. And you make a map how your customer goes through a sequence of beliefs to become ready to work with you. So if this is your product, you're going to have one major belief, and they're going to go through a sequence of beliefs to come to this one conclusion that the way of getting this result is the best way to get what they want. And that's how we structure the marketing, is to help people tackle their false beliefs that are holding them back from taking the action that they need.
In those first two steps, that was really clear. Give me an example of a product or SaaS service that you've done this with.
Yeah. The easiest for me to do would be just my own customers. So my own customers at the beginning of the journey, when they're not ready to work with me, they might believe, like a lot of people, that this myth that build it and they'll come. So they believe, like, if I make an excellent product, I'll definitely be successful. So I'm going to put all my effort into building the best thing that I can. And then they find that after building it, that there's no users. It's very difficult to acquire users. So that would be something very early. And if you have that belief, you're not ready to work with me. You don't, because you believe that the product needs to come first. You can either learn that yourself, or some of my marketing can help you come to that conclusion. And the way it would do that is, instead of trying to use tricks or manipulation, would be to show you evidence that this isn't the case. So show you examples. Hey, look, here's an example of fantastic products that have failed over and over again. Or here's examples of terrible products that had great marketing and somehow managed to get that first sale, but weren't great companies. So if you see these examples, I don't have to try to convince you anymore. And so that's what we do. We just map the sequence. And then maybe at the very end of the belief spectrum, where you're very close to working, you might think with me, you might be very close to work with me. You might think, I know I need to do all this stuff, but I can just figure it out on my own. I don't need a consultant or a coach. And so then in that case, we can see how much time you can save and how much your time is worth versus accelerating by skipping all the pitfalls. And the way to do that, again, wouldn't be like a sales pitch. It would be to show examples of how maybe some of their heroes have used business coaches or have used marketing coaches to get these results faster. And that would bring you to boom, ready to take the plunge. I love that thing. I spent a while trying to make it simple. And now I think there is something where you can make this map and you can start to see that you're turning green, and you can start to see that it's working.
What I like about this the best is, as entrepreneurs and investors and idea people often will say one comes before the other in a very sequential fashion. And what I'm hearing and what I've learned today is they all work together in a kind of micro iterative process. Take an idea, test it out. Take an idea, test it out. And it could only take a month to do. It doesn't have to take forever. It's not a long lead time of research and development for a product or a 3-year engagement with a marketing firm from day one. So those are like huge aha moments for me as an entrepreneur, with anybody that has a product or a service that wants to really understand how to get their amazing thing into the world, knowing you got to get them as a customer to understand where they are first, not what I want to sell to them as a...
Exactly. Yeah. And you can start anywhere in that, but you don't have to start with building the product. That's the main thing I wish everybody knew, is that you should really start with seeing what people will respond to.
Can we dive into my niche to see what people respond to?
Yes.
So in my niche, I find that what I think, my assumption is that the belief is all kids are entitled. All Gen Zers are lazy all Gen Zers don't know how to work hard and don't want to save money. And so with a large amount of wealth transition, so boomers to Gen X, Gen Z, Gen Alpha is just entering the
Mhm.
workforce. When beliefs are rooted with money, often it's not talked about. So
Mhm.
how can I maybe start to brainstorm or strategize ways to reach that customer to try to understand them better?
Ways to reach people who are in this situation. Yeah, you probably know a lot of them that you're doing already. So your
Okay.
speaking engagements are surely a much higher concentration of people in your target audience than, say, just advertising. But you can reach anybody with advertising. So the funny thing about advertising is actually, and I love this, that all advertising works, right? The only question is how efficient it is. So if you were to start to ask some of these questions in terms of an ad, so if you were to, let's say you had a question that you wanted to answer with ads, that was the appropriate way in this case, you could start to run ads that specifically call out this group. And you would use all that work that we were talking about before and your understanding of how they talk to each other, what they call themselves, to basically call them out in advertisements and ask the question. And you'd be able to start to see what kind of response do I get for these different ways of phrasing an offer or a question. So if you wanted to, let's say, which of these pain points is the strongest? Is it that my kids are entitled, or I don't know how to teach them about wealth? Like, one would they respond to stronger, for example? You can run an ad and you could run two different ads that specifically only talk about that difference, where that's the only difference, and just see the response. And I think in your category, the ads would be more expensive than, say, asking some super mainstream question like Coke or Pepsi would be cheaper to measure because more people would even be interested. And I think that's how I would go about those earlier questions. And then the key is just to see, okay, what does it cost to ask a question? And does this make sense? So for typical cases where it's mainstream sort of questions, a question costs about $3 to answer. That's what I like to say. So if you want to compare two things, it's $6. So it's very cheap for mainstream questions. And as you go more and more rare, you have to pay more for the chance to hit somebody who would find it relevant. And that's what we'd have to experiment with at the beginning, just to see, okay, what would it cost to use this kind of approach?
Got it. And very basic question, because I've never paid
Yeah.
for an ad before.
Yeah.
You said $6, so I get the question answered once,
Yeah.
or that as a daily budget that runs
That's
for a
like
period of
once.
time?
That's
Okay.
once. It's just like super high level. How much does it cost to try something? $6 or $3. Sorry, $3. So if you want to try two things, compare A and B, you'd spend $6. And typically with these kinds of activities, I like to ask maybe 10 questions. Usually it's 10 or 100. I don't know why. It's either 10 very specific things or you want to try a big mass of things and see what gets the best response. So you're looking at $30 for something or 300 to answer, depending on what kind of question set you've put together.
Got it. Take me to the next phase. Say I've identified, I've answered some questions. I am ready to say, accelerate my growth into this market space.
Yeah.
What do I do next?
Yeah, the next thing to do would be to develop an entire ad. So you could continue this process until you've isolated and proven out all the little elements of an ad, put them together, and make sure you're getting the response that you want. You would also decide very early on, with, again, backed up by these tests, even before you made anything or made a web page or anything like that, you figure out, what offer do I want to provide? Am I offering something indirect? Do I want people to get a guide about wealth? Do I want people to book my calendar? Do I want to give them a guide and then ask them to book my calendar? So we would set to a sequence that we wanted to test. And then we go about the work of driving traffic, optimizing those pages, looking at the initial costs, and then just running this optimization loop until the costs are in line. And I think typical numbers for coaches and consultants, people like us, typical numbers are somewhere between $250 and $500 to get someone to book a call. There's a chance that for you, it may be higher, but in the end, all that matters is that your lifetime value or your first time value is greater than your marketing costs. The larger the sale, the more testing has to go into it. Then once you have it, you can run this thing and keep it going.
That sounds very simple to understand, even though it may be a complex solution to implement.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense. The cost of a customer and the lifetime value of the customer, knowing there may need to be some sort of a runway for you to up and get started. And maybe if you don't give it enough time, you may pull prematurely a product or a
Exactly.
service
Yeah.
that absolutely provides value. You just haven't followed the system that you teach.
Exactly. And yeah, it takes a little bit of confidence and conviction to say, I'm going to figure out what this costs. And it is possible to pull the plug too early. It is possible where what certain benchmarks are, and you're saying, let's say you have an idea that a lead should cost you $20, but it's costing you 100. Depending on what you're planning to sell, it may be fine. It may be fine to just eat that initial cost to start the train running. And that's something I can help clients with, is to know what's realistic and what should we put on the line to try each test out. And here's a funny thing. I think that I think in the marketing space, there's a bit of a guru problem. There's a bit of a lot of people make huge promises and they have the system. And there's a lot of people have fantastic experience and they can help you. But in the end, until it's happened, until you have the thing running, no one actually knows for sure. It could be that your user, your type of client, your type of avatar responds differently and they need a different type of funnel. And that's something I can help people test cheaply without putting a lot of capital on the line, just to explore these other avenues.
Point for Jean-Michel for being
Yeah.
the expert to really decrease that learning curve. And so if you want to DIY it, you wouldn't have that expert holding your hand or leading the way with the flag saying, this is
Yeah.
normal. There's a hill up ahead. Get ready. Like hiking a trail without a guide the first time
Yeah.
around. Don't leave it to the novice. Leave it to the pros.
Exactly. So can we dive a little bit more into what you're thinking about in terms of testing and your
Yes,
funnel?
I would love that very much.
Let's do it.
So I potentially was under the wrong impression. So the product that I most am interested in serving or promoting or reaching is speaking. So specifically a keynote speech or a breakout at a event. So the people that will book me are different than maybe the people that I am sending ads to, but the people that I am sending ads to have the influence to the event planners. So
I
are there
see.
other businesses that you have where maybe it's more B2B rather than B2C that these fund look for?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. It's a little bit different. Like B2C, you can't spend as much. You need it to be self-serve, that you get somebody right into the point of buying, or they opt into something where they can in the future self-serve option and sign up. And I think for what you're talking about, it's very similar to higher end B2B, where you need people to book a call with a salesperson. You need someone to walk you through and explore your case and how the product can serve them. So it's very similar to a call application funnel.
So I would love to start to validate some of those testing ideas to then lead people to book a call. My current process is you find me on social media or you find me on the internet, then you visit my website, and my website says, are you struggling with entitlement, or do you know if you have entitlement? Grab my lead magnet so you can assess how entitled are my kids. And
I love it.
because many times parents don't know they're their problem, but I can't advertise to them if they don't know it's their problem.
Yeah.
Who gave them unlimited screen time? I didn't. You did.
Yeah.
Now they're mad that they don't have screen time. It's not entitlement. That's just what they're used to.
Yeah.
And then once they have completed that request for my quiz or my survey, they will then follow up with my email nurture sequence. That's 3 emails long that says, here's what I do and here's how I help families just like you. Book a call with me to bring me into your next event. Those are my 3 steps. And historically, it's all been referral based. I've not had a single person come through this funnel. So I need you to help me once my referrals and my network. I'm a very friendly person, but I can't reach everyone just by networking.
Yep.
I need funnels to help reach the rest of the audience potential that's out there that doesn't know about me, but has this.
Yeah, there's several jumping 8 steps ahead. There's so many different ways that you could get people into your world, right? There's so many different things that you could promote. So you could promote a specific lead magnet. You could promote your podcast or other podcasts that you've appeared on. So you could just get people in your world somehow. You could promote the events. You can promote traffic to your website. So there's all these different avenues that we can look at their potential and the difficulty to pull them off, and to how much would it cost to get data to see how they work, and basically compare them. So you could say, we have several different ideas. We could figure out these main pain points and drive somebody to a website to get that lead magnet, like the lander for this lead magnet. Or we could drive them to the podcast, or we could drive traffic to the website. So there's several different things that we could attempt to see which one effectively gets you calls.
Got it. So to summarize, you're saying we could test the variable of the cost of the ad as one variable, and then the call to action is another variable. And then
Like
the
what
third
whole
variable
funnel?
would be how they like to consume media. Some people
Yeah,
don't want to sign up for another email, don't
exactly.
want to be in that group. Some people want to listen to a podcast episode. Other people say, just take me to your website. I'm ready to buy now. So I
Yeah.
think that's a neat way to identify, even with a very simple startup call to action, there's already 3 variables that we have to test out before we should really
Yeah.
go full force in any one strategy.
Exactly. Yeah. And you would look at each of those funnels and see which one performs better. But then the other thing I would say, taking a different approach entirely, I would say in your case, there's one more thing you could do, which is a little bit different than all these funnels, which is just to start to expand your reach for the media you're creating. So if you're already doing organic content and trying to build an audience and trying to build a brand, there's 2 ways to go with whatever you're building, whatever content you're creating. You can run the process on whatever platform. Like right now, for example, I'm trying to grow on Twitter. I'm taking it more seriously. I'm doing the whole thing. I'm writing things for Twitter. I'm talking to people on Twitter. I'm trying to be on Twitter, and it's working, but it will take time. It'll take time to grow an audience. And I'm really waiting for Twitter. I'm dependent on the whole system. But there's another thing you can do instead of, or in addition to that, which is to take your best content and pay the platforms to put it in front of the people that you want to see it. And those don't have to be ads. Those don't have to look like ads. They don't have to have a call to action. And then what you can do is say, let's say you have some video talking about this. If you make that video very specific so that only your people would find it interesting, then anyone who watches your videos, that's a lead. So anyone who watches your videos, that's a lead. So watch time is a lead, especially for super niche content. If it's about, maybe you're really curious about this, but that's possible. But also some of those people will be, you could think of them as leads. And anyone who watches a video on any platform, you can retarget them with content. And so you can retarget them with ads. You can retarget them with join my newsletter, with whatever you want. And I think this would be a really good thing for somebody in your niche to do. It just accelerates your personal brand growth, and it's very cheap. Like, it's very, in my opinion, for $300 or $500 a month, you could get so much more people to see your best content, and then you'd have the ability to put more content in front of only those people. So that's another approach.
That is exciting. Yeah. So instead of a 5-minute speaker reel that just gets pitched to event planners, maybe it's a 30-second clip where I go on a soapbox talking about kids don't use textbooks anymore. They learn algebra on a computer. And so
it could be
that then gets in front of them through a sponsored ad or a sponsored post. LinkedIn is my home. Talk me through if I were to do this on LinkedIn.
Yeah, you could do it on YouTube. Probably more cost effective than LinkedIn. LinkedIn's pretty expensive. The content that your group is already looking at, you can make your videos and put them in the feed of people who are watching those channels. So you find the best channels and you put your content there. And I like to make short content and long content. So maybe 5-minute things and 60-second things. And then you can just see whoever watches it, you're able to retarget them and give them more content. So it's a much faster way to grow a YouTube channel.
Fantastic. Yeah. I think that is on my list of things to do.
Yep.
Knowing that starting something new requires the creation and then the back end of the house, which is the metrics, the tracking. Yeah. What are some more is better, but give me some specifics of what are those metrics I should be tracking? You said watch time. What else should I be looking at to gauge success or relative directional movement?
Yeah. So for whatever platform, and I won't get into the nitty gritty because it'll get too intense for numbers, but for whatever platform and for whatever format, you're going to have a cost to retarget them. So for all of your videos, I would look at the cost to retarget my people. And that's the metric I would look at. That's it really. And the other is conversations that you can get out of those videos. So if you ask for something, like comment below, can you start a conversation with those people? That's the other. Those are the two main video metrics that I would look at. And then usually the average random first attempt at marketing something usually doesn't go well. You can expect that for every 10 videos, one of them will be significantly better than the average. So if you're making 10 ideas, every 1 in 10, the numbers will be like, okay, hey, that's looking better. And if you keep producing content and keep promoting it over time, you're going to really narrow in on the topics. Because especially if you're making a 5-minute video, you can only talk about one thing in 5 minutes. So you're going to start to see, oh, look, these angles always get better views. And using this approach, you get that data so much faster. Whereas if you're just doing organic, it takes if you have a huge following, okay, maybe you can get better metrics. But when you're starting, you just don't know. You get 3 views, and what do you do with that? But if you promote a video for $3 a day, $10 a day or something, in a week, you'll know, or in a few days, you're going to have thousands of people who might have seen it, and you'll be able to see real metrics about, was this interesting? Was this topic on point?
Got it. That is super helpful and encouraging, because sometimes that goes back to, you put out 9 ideas and none of them were great, and you need to do number 10 and that will take off. So that's a great reminder. Say I follow that step. I've identified which videos are gaining traction. I've identified which topics get the most attention. What do I do next? Do I continue to promote that, or do I tweak it further?
Yeah, when you find just generally the basic marketer thing is stop doing the things that don't work and double down on what does work. And what I like to do is, for anything that I get great results for, I would take 70% of all my next tests and I would try iterations, variations, slight changes to that to see if I can zoom in a little bit further. And then the other 30% is like wild new ideas, something totally different, so that you always have a little bit that's searching and a little bit that's exploiting what worked. And once you're doing this, after a month or so, you're going to have a lot of people that you're able to retarget. And so from there, you can start putting out offers and seeing, does this work? You can start measuring the offers you were using on cold traffic. You can try them with these engaged warm audience.
Got it. So I'm not pitching a call to action. I am creating a warm audience. So cold to warm, and then warm to converting. And you're probably going to tell me there's iterations to go from warm to customer. Walk me through what those look like and how long you stay in that space.
I think that's really different for everyone and every offer. So I can't say how it works for your folks. For my folks, for what I would say in my world, for SaaS people, and I'm also reaching out to entrepreneurs. So it's a very specific like subsegment of SaaS. And I would say there's 2 scales going at the same time. This is how I think of it. Is one scale is, how desperately do you need a solution? How badly do you need help? Some people have lots of funding and they have not a lot of pressure and they're not worried about it. It's not even on the plan. So they are down here. They don't have a big need. Other people that I've talked to, they had 3 big go-to-market campaigns fail. They had a CMO, didn't work. They blew a lot of money. And now also their investors know, and they feel a lot of pressure to solve the problem. So this is like one scale, is how severe is the pain right now? And then the other factor is, how mature are they in terms of entrepreneurship and business? So some people, they just started, they haven't done business before, so they may not have as much experience and know what's realistic. And then on the other hand, you might have somebody who's had a corporate career or they've started another business previously, so they have a lot of serious experience to bring to the project. And so these are the 2 sliders that I imagine when I'm talking to people. Is, okay, here's somebody new to the entrepreneur game, in severe pain or not in pain, and based on where they are, that tells me if I should offer to help them right there and start working together, or if they need some free resources or space to do it themselves.
That's a great summary and very helpful, because you either have time or you have money. It's very rare you have both, a lot of both.
That's right.
Awesome. So when do you start testing how much something costs? So when I say how much something costs, the thing that they're purchasing. So my warm to my customer, my conversion.
Yeah.
They know they have the problem. They're very warm. But when do I discover how price sensitive they are? Or once I'm clear on my message, clear on my copy?
Yeah. I think your case is a special case. If it's a BT thing or a certain lower price, no problem to just put different prices out there. And with one company I'm working with, we tested 30 different prices in a week. And now with easy tests, and now we're actually running campaigns for different prices to different markets and seeing how price sensitive are they? You can't do that. You can't do that, I don't think. And what I would do is, I think if you have 50 discovery calls, with 50 calls, you can figure anything out. I think this is my experience. After you've talked to 50 people in a discovery call, especially if you're working through a script, you can start to get a sense for pricing. It's not as like scientific, but you get somebody's response. You're there with them, especially if you're tuned into their emotions when you say how you feel and how they feel, you think they feel anyway, when you say the price. And then you can start to work your way up. Once you validate an offer at one price, then the next question is, depending on where your business is, and if you're able to potentially lower your close rate, you can start to increase the price.
That's a great tip. I would not have thought to go that way. And 50 discovery calls really is not that hard if you're doing this to try it out. And I think that's a great idea.
Great. Do it.
What else should I know, or what else should they ask you and they don't when it comes to this strategy?
There is one thing I wish everybody, a perspective I would like to share. I think especially in the corporate world or with a service provider, it's very common to have this attitude like, okay, when will we have results? And I totally understand, and I work to get clients results as fast as possible. But if you're launching something completely new, all we have is these group indexes. We have these benchmarks. It reminds me of like when we first had a kid and we read all these baby books and they're like, this should happen every hour. And then you're like, it's been 3 hours. Should we go? Is this a problem? And eventually you start to realize, no, that for my kid, that's what he does. I don't know. It's just, he's not right. And these group indexes don't tell you what's going to happen for your business. So one great perspective that I like is whenever you're trying something new, the first thing to do is to figure out how much time until we get data. And we're trying to get a certain amount of data. We're trying to get so that we can map out your solvable equation. What equation are we trying to solve? And you can't just say, unless you're guessing, what your number should be and how soon you should get them. So the first step is, how much time till we get the data where we know what we should expect? And once you have that, then the next step is, okay, the next effort is solving that equation. Can we prove that we really solved it? So that's what I wish every new business owner would start with, is not how soon till we get X users. It's how soon till we know what's the right funnel and the metrics we need to hit. So you have a real target that's based on something.
Mic drop. That was so important. And when you're not in that space, or you're operating out of a place of either scarcity or kind of time pressures or investor pressures or even just money pressures, you're not able to be open to that answer that says there's no guarantee of how fast you get results. What we do know is we need to figure out how long it takes to validate our data.
Exactly. Yeah.
How do I get 50 discovery calls?
Yeah, dude, that's all you need. That's all you need. If you have 50 calls
speaking,
and a script, make sure you have a script where you're able to iterate off the script. And you just want to check in your script. It's like every sales script has discovery. You're like, what is the main problem? And you're trying to look at how do they see the problem, not how you just see the problem. So one of the issues you might face, I always have this, is like when I talk to someone, I can get them to go in some direction. That's not very useful. If you can get them to say something or see something, that's not the marketing information you need. You need, how did they see it before you started messing with them? Like, how do they see it before you? And that's what you need to extract when you're looking at your call recordings, is like, how do they see the problem? What do they think their problem is? What is it really? And then I can work on the other things like pricing and all that.
Really helpful. It was really good.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, that was fun.
Thank you so much. I've learned more about ads in this time together than I have at all from watching anybody else's videos.
That's great.
I so appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Julie, thank you so much. It was a great conversation.
Thank you as well.